This question comes from a 7 News viewer. What, if you were reelected, what issue that maybe is supported by the opposition party would you be willing to compromise on to move the country forward?
Well, the number one issue facing this country is our economy. And the first thing we need to do, hopefully in the lame duck session, is to avoid sequestration. We need to pass legislation that puts everything on the table, not just budget cuts, but also taxes and everything. So I think we should look at Simpson Bowles and go from there.
Is this an opportunity for some bipartisan working out of this particular fiscal issue?
Absolutely. I think if the Republicans would agree to put revenue on the table, the tax cuts for the top 1%, then we could sit down and really talk about putting our budget together. That would give certainty, and it would help us grow the economy.
The supporters and detractors of affordable health care run pretty much along party lines. What, if anything, would you change in that bill, in that law?
Well, what I would do if I could change that law, I'd put a public option in the insurance exchanges in the states, because I think the number one thing we need to do in health care for Americans, aside from getting universal coverage for everybody, we need to make sure it's also affordable for everybody, and I think that would make it more competitive and more affordable.
Fair to say that you don't think it's fair to require people to buy insurance?
No, I think everybody has to have insurance if you want to have the good things that have already started to take effect, like insurance coverage for kids up to age 26, right. No discrimination for pre-existing condition. You can't have that unless you have everybody in the program.
Okay. Metro State University, we just saw this summer that they came up with their new program of the actual amount of money that would be paid to attend that school. Illegal immigrants getting a special rate, paying less than out of state, more than in state. Do you support that decision?
Yes, I do. We call these kids the dreamers. These are children, many of whom were brought here when they were infants or young toddlers. They want to achieve the American dream just like my kids do. And I think that they should have that opportunity to go to college and to contribute to our society and to become Americans.
We have seen dwindling resources for Colorado schools, K through 12. What would you be able to do with another term to try and help get more money back to Colorado to help those kids?
Well, one of our top agenda items as we look at the federal budget, balancing the budget, we also need to look at how we're going to pay for education, because we can't move forward in a new economy if we don't educate our kids.
Let's talk about Social Security. They estimate that by 2033, Social Security revenue will not keep up with the amount of money that's going out. What kind of reform do you think is necessary to keep that from happening?
Well, the first thing we need to recognize, Social Security is a promise that we made, and all of us paid into that program. And so for current seniors, recipients of Social Security, they were made that promise, and we need to keep it. But for everybody else, we need to sit down on a bipartisan basis and think of how to keep it solvent. One idea that I think is a good idea is raising the income level for the phase out of the Social Security deduction. So wealthier people would pay into the Social Security Trust Fund longer. That seems to be garnering a lot of bipartisan support, and I think that would really help.
Any other things that you can think of that would actually help in the Social Security concerns about whether or not folks are going to be taken care of?
Well, as part of an overall solution, like Simpson Bowles or something like that, we need to have everything on the table, and when we see how that works out, there's other things we can look at, but we need to look at it in a bipartisan way.
So if you are reelected and you get back to Washington again, what's the number one item on your agenda first day back in the office? First
day back in the office, number one item is to reform political financing. We are all sick and tired of these political ads flooding the airwaves, many of them from shadowy third-party organizations. We have legislation that passed the House before called Disclose, and I would be fighting. I'm the chief deputy whip for the Democrats, which means I'm in charge of getting votes to pass legislation. I would be fighting to pass that again and get it through the Senate so we can bring some sanity to these elections. And then, of course, we need to work very, very hard to bring our economy into balance, as I discussed before.
We now have 30 seconds for you to be able to make a final statement if you'd like to speak directly to the voters.
I've been honored to represent the 1st Congressional District for the last 16 years, and together we've been able to accomplish a lot. Just this last year, even though we were in a very partisan environment in Congress, I passed legislation to help people with the shortage of prescription drugs. I passed a renewable energy bill for hydropower, and I've worked on many other issues. If I go back to Washington in January, I will continue these same efforts for health care, for renewable energy, and for balancing our budget and for creating jobs. That's why I hope the constituents of the 1st Congressional District will re-elect me on November 6th.